Alright, so for this video in the iRide tutorial series, we're going to go over how to create a powerline spline tool. So what does that look like? It looks like this. So I'm going to drag out this actor and it's going to generate power lines for me. So right now it starts off with 2. I can drag a spline point out from it, extends the length. Cables automatically adjust. I can then hold Alt, pull off that point, and generate another. So I can keep doing this. And if you take a look at it, the power lines themselves, or the power poles, I should say, they actually are affected by each other. They turn towards one another. The lines are dynamic per power pole. So if I turn it, it adjusts the line accordingly, so the length is always correct. So this is really handy. And if you wanted to make power poles normally in Unreal, you'd probably have to do something along the lines of dragging out a static mesh. So if I were to grab the static mesh for the power line, I'd have to drag it out, and then I would have to drag out a second one, and then I'd have to look up like the cable actor in Unreal, drag that out, and then I would have to try to position everything accordingly and try to get to connect to the proper points between the two lines, and then set all the settings for it. And it's a tedious process, and once you have it set, you can't move things around. So that is problematic, right? So what I did is I automated this process. Generally speaking, if you can find a quick way to automate it in a construction script and blueprints, then you might as well. I mean, this just saves you time and energy and a headache. Look at this, just automatically does it for you. So that's what this tutorial is about. I'm going to show you how to make a spline-based power pole system that you can use to make life a lot easier for you. All right, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'd like you guys to do is get a power line or power pole mesh. So I have this mesh right here, and if you look in the video's description, I'll have a download link so you can follow along with me. So if you want to go ahead and pause this video right now, grab that mesh, we can get going. Okay, so after you've grabbed the mesh, go ahead and create a new folder, put that mesh inside of it, and then we're going to create 2 actors, okay? So the first actor is going to be based on this power pole. So let's go ahead and create. So right click in the content browser, go ahead and select blueprint class, actor, and then let's name that power pole. Okay. Now the second actor we're going to create, so right click, blueprint class, create actor, is going to be the BP underscore spline power line. Okay. Okay, so once we have those 2 blueprints created, we're going to set up the actor for the power pole first, okay? So go ahead and open up the power pole actor. I'm going to drag it over here. And actually, I'm going to pull it off this tab real quick and just put it in the middle of the screen. So under the components section right here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this powerline mesh 1, and I'm just going to drop it right in, and it's automatically going to stick it right in that blueprint for me. Let's expand this. Okay, so the general idea here is I'm going to set up the connection points, I'm going to set up the cables, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this power pole actor and I'm going to put it inside, I'm going to call it inside of the BP spline power line. It's just easier to separate them instead of trying to put them in the same system. So this is how I've chosen to do it. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So let's set up the power pole. Okay, so a couple things we're going to need. Okay, we want cables, right? So let's go ahead and add 2 cable actors. So let's see, I can just go ahead and type in cable, and it gives me the cable right here. And I'm going to call this cable 1. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call that cable 2. So those give me my cables. You can see them spawn down here. Now, I want them to connect on each one of these pegs on each power pole. So how do I do that? In this instance, I'm going to use a cube, basically, a cube to set those points, just because it's an easy way. They're easy things to reference. So go ahead and click on Add Component. I'm just going to go down to Cube, add that cube, and let's call it Con1 for connection 1. And there we go. So it's right here, and I can drag it around. Now, what I want to do is I want to place it on this peg. It's kind of big right now, so let's go over to its transform and set it to, let's say, 0.2 on each axis. Okay, that's more manageable. And then I'm going to drag this, and I'm going to stick it right on the center of this. So the center of this cube is basically where the cable itself is going to connect. And in the beginning, it's where it's going to end until we set the endpoint to the next connector in line on the next power pole, which I will show you in a moment. So I have one of these. Let's go ahead and make 2 of them. Just as a side note, if you can't get these to line up properly, make sure you turn off grid snapping. Like if I were to turn it on, you can see that it's snapping and it might not snap quite right. So just if you're having problems with that and you're new to Unreal, just go ahead and turn that off. Okay, so let's go ahead and duplicate this connection point, and I will call it con2. Alrighty, just like that. And let's see. It looks like it's added these connection points. Looks like it put them under this cable right here. And I don't necessarily want that. What I want is I want all 4 of these actors to be connected to the power line mesh. Like that's where they should be parented. So I'm going to go ahead and hit control and select both of these. I'm going to drag them over to the power line just like that. It looks like the 2 cables are already connected. So if they're not already parented to the power line mesh, like underneath of it like this, you can see how it bumps in on the hierarchy, then you want to go ahead and do that. You want to do that because you want these to always move with the mesh. And if they're not connected to the mesh, they won't always necessarily move with that mesh, okay? So that's an important thing to note. One thing to note here is I didn't put a space. That might cause problems later on trying to call it. So let's put that in there. Okay, so go ahead and compile it. All right, and then let's select connection 2, and let's drag that over to the second peg, right? So that's our second connection point. Looks pretty good. So now we want to set the connection. We want to set the cable locations right now. So I want to set them both the ending and the beginning point at the connection points. So cable 1 connection point should connect to the cable 1 should connect to the cable 1 connection point. Same with cable 2. Cable 2 should connect to the cable 2 connection point. So I'm going to set their positions to actually be in these boxes. And what I mean by that is this. So if I were to click on connection 1 right here, and then I go over to its location, I can just copy that. I can select cable 1. Now its gizmo and start location is going to be this transform location, so I can go ahead and right click that. I can say paste. You can see it snaps right to it. So the end is down here still. The beginning is right here. I want to put them both in the same location for now, connected to this. So let's go ahead and go to the end location, right click that, and paste it there as well. And I can see it's kind of hanging there, right? So the cable is snapped both end and the beginning to the same spot. You know, it's just a good way to handle it, especially when we add in a second, or second, third, fourth, whatever, a power pole. It's going to need to connect to those, and so obviously it needs to start from the right connection point, and that's what that is. Let's go ahead and do the same thing to the second one. Okay, so let's copy its location. Let's select cable 2. Let's paste that location on both the end and the beginning, so it's snapped up there. That looks pretty good. I like that. And then compile it. Now, one thing to note here is we don't really need these cubes to be visible anymore, because we're not going to be referencing them visually. We're just going to be referencing their actual connection points later on. So let's go ahead and select both of them. Control, just click them both. Go down to rendering, and let's say let's just turn off. Let's say hidden in game, and let's turn off the visibility. So we don't really need to look at those right now. But if you ever need to see them again or move them around, you can always come back to this and make that happen. So go ahead and compile that. Okay, so at this point, our power pole is about set up the way it needs to be set up. We shouldn't have to come into this again. So you can go ahead and save it, make sure it's compiled. You can go ahead and close it for the moment, unless we need that later. I don't think we will, though. So the next thing to do is to open up our BP spline power line. This is going to be the spline system, okay? So go ahead and open that up. And in this case, I am going to just snap it right up here at the top. Now, it's going to open up to the viewport in my case. Now, we have the construction script and the event graph. And depending on how much you know about Unreal, you might know how to use these properly. I'm not going to assume too much, so I'm just going to say just let you know we're not using the event graph in this. Event graph is for stuff that's actually playing real time in the game. And we want something that's playing before the game, or the calculations are run before the game, which is going to happen in the construction script, because this is going to be in-editor stuff that we're working with. So go ahead and go to the construction script first. Okay, so we're in the construction script right now, okay? And what we're going to want to do is add a spline component, and this is the spline component they're going to be using. So go ahead up to Components, Add. You can type in Spline. You can see right here under Utility we have a spline. So add that spline, and just go ahead and leave it as is. You can make it the senior if you want. It's not necessary, but you're welcome to do so. And then we can always get a reference to this spline. That's where we're going to start. So here's our spline reference right here. What do we want to do? Well, we basically, I guess the theory of this is, or the idea of it, is that we're going to get the number of spline points, right? And then for each spline point, we're going to generate one power line pole. We're going to get a reference to each of these power line poles right here, and then connect the cables. So we're going to get reference to the first one, second one, connect the cables. First one, second, you know, it's like it's going to, wherever we're referencing, it's going to get the one ahead of it and put the cables in place. So I have connection points. I have connection one. You know, each of these actors are just a copy of themselves. So connection one, connection two, connection one, connection two. I want to take connection one, connect it to number two. I want to take connection one, put it to this connection one. This connection one goes to that connection one, and so forth and so on. So that's the general theory of what's going to happen. We're duplicating telephone poles for each spline point, and then we're going to connect the cables accordingly. So let's try to make that happen, okay? So we have the spline, so we need the number of spline points. So pull off this, let go, and then type in get number, and then it's get number of spline points. And you can see it autofills there. You can just press enter. So that gives us the number of spline points. Now what I want to do is drag off this and say -1. Oops. Just put in minus, and it's going to give you integer minus an integer. Go ahead and select that. Okay, and I want to save this to a variable. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So if you just drag off and let go, you can say promote to variable. A local variable isn't necessary. Just use promote to variable, and then let's call that variable number of spline points. And the reason why I throw in the -1 on here is because it just helps me out. So when it's counting spline points, it counts 0 as 1. So it's not like 0 is nothing. 0 is a spline point. 1 is a spline point. So if you really think about it, 1 is actually 2 in this instance. And this kind of makes it set up so it makes a little more sense to me. It's not necessary to do it like how I'm doing it, but it works best in my head. So let's just roll with it. Let's see. Okay, so I have a number of spline points. And the next thing I want to do is I want to use something called a for loop. Okay, so if I drag off this and type in for loop, it's going to give me some options here. I don't want a for each loop. That's for an array. I just want a basic for loop. So click on that. It brings it up. Okay, and then we want to set the last index to our number of spline points. So that gives us our max amount of spline points. The amount of times it's going to loop. Okay, and a loop is basically I can set up logic in this loop body, you know, what's connected to the loop, and it's going to run it. So it's going to run it through this index. So if I have 0 here, and I have, say, 5 points, or 5 power poles, then for each power pole, it's going to perform the same logic. And it's going to go from 1 to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, 0 through however many I have. And that is going to create our spline system. So what connects to this first loop body right here? Well, I am going to drag off this and create another variable. I'm going to say promote to variable, and I'm going to say index of loop. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I can grab a reference to this variable later instead of dragging off the index itself, because things can get kind of messy in here, and this helps me keep things organized, and it'll help you stay organized as well. So you can go ahead and pull this variable out, and you can say get, and you can get that anytime you want. So you don't have to pull off this. You can just go straight from the variable reference. Okay. Now that I have this variable reference right here, I am going to get some key components, okay? Key components for our spline system. So one of them I have to get is get location at spline point, okay? It even has the reference here for spline already. And this makes sense because you need to get that location in order to place the power pole, right? Or it's not going to work. It has to know where it's located. So the index is basically at what point it's going to place. So right here it has default of 0. That means it's going to stick a power pole in the first place. Well, I want it for every place, and so this is going to loop through all of the spline points available, and it's going to, at the end of this logic, it's going to place a power pole in each spot on the spline reference right here. Okay, so that's good. And another thing I need is I need to get the rotation at the spline point. So right click, get rotation, get rotation at spline point. You can see it popped up down here. Now it's giving me another reference to the same spline. That's fine. You can have as many duplicate references as you want. They mean the same thing. They're saying the exact same thing. I could even connect these together if I wanted to, if I didn't want to have it there, but it doesn't make it any more costly to have multiple references of the same thing. And I also need the same index loop, so I'm just going to drag that down here and plug it in. Once again, you could have duplicates. It's not a problem as long as they're referencing the same variable. Okay, so at this point, I have a location that I need, and I have to get the rotation at spline point that I need. But I haven't even spawned or created my power line actor in here, in this blueprint. You know, I've created the actor outside of this. Now I need to kind of bring it in. So let's go ahead and just compile this real quick. And then right here, I'm going to go ahead and add child actor component. So right click, add child actor component. It sees that. Okay. And I want to spawn this child actor at the relative its relative transform. It should be the location at the spline point, and it automatically converts the location to a relative transform for you. And for you people who are new to Unreal, a transform has location, scale, and rotation. So it's just going to add the rotation as 0 for now, and it's going to add the scale as 1, and it's going to include this location. So there's a little information for you if you're not familiar with that terminology. Okay, so now we're adding a child actor component, right? But I'm not setting it anymore, right? You don't see any references to it. It's like, well, how do I turn this into a a power pole? If I say telephone pole, forgive me. That's what I originally named it when I was experimenting with it. So we need to set this. We need to set the child actor component. So go ahead and drag off this and say set child actor class. Okay, set child actor class. And go ahead and select the BP power line. Now, I have 2 here because I've done this before. Actually, I have 3. Interesting. So go ahead and select your BP power line, the one you named. And I'm just going to come down here. It's power line BP. Okay, I set that incorrectly. So it's power line BP. I want to make sure we're using the same stuff here. So power line BP. So that sets our child actor class. So now, at these locations, we should have the power line set, or the power pole set in place. And if I click on the viewport over here, you know, you can see that happening. You can see I have 2 poles set per point. And just to make things clear here, I'm going to give these a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of space. And if I wanted to add a 3rd one right here, I could totally do that, and it would automatically generate for me along the spline, which is kind of nifty. Now, I don't need 3 right now, and 2 seems like a good number to start with. You know, it's a little more manageable. So I'm just going to delete that, but I just wanted to show you that that is clearly working, and it should be working for you. So let's go back to the construction script. Okay. So what do we do now? Well, we need to get a reference to the power pole we just created, and we need to cast to it so we can get a specific variables from it and specific components from it. And then we need to add those to an array. Now, why do we need to do that? So basically, I could get reference to each one of these power poles right here. I could get reference to them, but it's not always going to give me the reference in order. So I could say get all child actors, and it would give me all the child actors, and I could like set the target for it, but it's not going to give me them in order, and that's something I need, is I need them in a specific order. So this is great if I just generally need them, but it doesn't give me what I want. So delete that, and what we're going to do is we're going to basically pull off this and say child actor, and we're just going to get the reference for the child actor, okay? And it's going to basically get the power line BP because it's been set as that. I know it's kind of weird because it's not flowing the right direction. You think there would be a reference pin on this you just pull off of, but it's actually still just this. It's kind of strange. I think that's a little counterintuitive. But you can pull off this, and you can say cast to power line BP. So I'm casting to the power line BP that we created. And now it's going to get a direct reference to the exact power line we're talking about, which is, you know, absolutely necessary in this case. So now we need to create some type of an array, okay, to hold all of these in, hold them in order, you know. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go down to variables. I'm going to create a new variable by pressing the plus sign. I'm going to name it all child actors of power line. That should be good. And then I'm going to come up here under the details panel. I'm going to select this, and then I'm just going to type in powerline underscore BP, what I named my actor. So power line, and it pops up right here. So BP. So you can scroll down to it, and it says object reference, and that is what we want. We want an object reference, but we don't want just an object reference. If we look here on the side, you can click on this, and it gives you options. We want an array of these, not just a single variable. We want an array, so it's a whole group of them. So click on that. You can see it changes to this blue grid, and that is exactly what we want. So go ahead and compile that, okay? And then we're going to pull this out of here, say get, pull off of this, and we're going to say add, okay? Press enter. Now pull off the powerline BP reference, plug it in, and that means that every time this loop runs, it's going to add a power line, get its exact reference and order, and it's going to store it in this all child actors of power line variable, array variable. So that way we not only get all the references we need, we get them in the exact order we need every single time, which is beautiful. Oh yeah, that can be, because it can definitely be problematic. So we've set the position of the poll, we've spawned the poll, we have the references in order. I guess we should probably add in the rotation. So go ahead and drag off, get rotation at spline point, and just say set relative rotation. Okay, so set relative rotation, plug it in. And for you guys who are unaware of this, go ahead and double click the line, any connection line, and it'll give you a rewire node. And then it just helps keep things organized. So you can go ahead and drag that down, get it out of your way, keep your blueprints nice and pretty. It's kind of like an art in itself, apparently. Anyway, and then we want to plug in the reference for the actor. So it's right here. Go ahead and double click, rewire, double click, rewire, and that should be good. So this right here is going to set things the way we want to. So if we come out to our main editor here, our main editor map, you can see the one I initially created. You can see the static mesh I just dragged out before. Delete that. Let's see, Powerline tutorial. Go ahead and drag out the Powerline blueprint right here. Okay, so you can see that we have the Powerline. It's generating the power poles. Hold Alt when you select one of these points, drag off. Okay, it'll keep making new ones. I'll just keep doing it. It's obviously rotating with the point as well, which is great. You can right click, you can add a spline point, you know, and it looks like it's adding them appropriately. You can also delete spline points and it'll generate appropriately. So we have that thus far, so that's good. The next step is the actual cable actors themselves connecting from power pole to power pole, from connecting point to connecting point. So let's go ahead and set that up. Okay, so we're moving on to the cables now. So what you're going to want to do to set up the cables is we're going to pull out another loop. So you can click, you can right click, you can search for for loop, or you can just copy this one, and that's pretty simple. So let's just copy it for now. So I'm going to copy this for loop, and when do we access this for loop? Now I could drag off the end of here and like the end of the set relative rotation and plug it into this loop, but that would cause a serious problem. Now, this loop has to run completely, and when it's completed, then we have all of its references. If we try to plug it in beforehand, it's gonna, all this other information is gonna run on a secondary loop, and it's gonna get really crazy, and it's not gonna work properly. So do not plug the loops in together while one is still running, and they would still be running if it was connected onto the end of that. I hope that makes sense. You know, the loop will run as long as you connect stuff to it, and then once it finishes that, it'll go to the second spline point, the third, the fourth, so on. So we don't want to do that. We want them to be separated. These are two different actions. We want to be completed at two different times, okay? So once it's completed, there's a completed output executable. So just take that, plug it into the for loop down here. Our index is still, the first index is still 0. The number of spline points, we can actually just bring that down here, drag off from the variable, connect it to the last index, gives us a proper number of spline points. So that's fine. And then I want you to pull off that and create something called a sequence. So pull off the loop body and then create a sequence. You can see it right here, under flow control. So the sequence, you're going to need this because we're going to split off and do two separate things. So I'm going to set up some groundwork first before we plug in all the nodes. So the first thing I want you to add to the sequence is attach to component. So right click, go attach to component. So go ahead and hit that up. Now you can see here that this is attached to component, but it says target as actor. We want target to be a scene component. So, because that's what it technically is. It's added onto this actor as a scene component. So this is incorrect, but it can be very confusing. There's a good chance you might run into this and things won't plug into it, and you'll be like, well, why? It's attached to component, because it has to be attached to scene component. So let's try it again. Attach to, oops, my bad. Attach to component. Now let's see here. So this one even gives me a spline reference that says target is scene component. You can see it says in the very bottom of that tannish box, and this one says target is actor. So that could be a little confusing. So delete the one you don't need. And we aren't actually targeting the spline in this instance, so just delete that reference. We're going to be targeting the connection points and cables that are connected to the actors themselves. So go ahead and pull this sequence, plug it into this attached component, and we're going to do two things here, two main things. We're going to attach cable actor 1 to connection 1 on the power pole in front of it, and we're going to do the same thing for cable 2. So we need 2 of these attached to components. So go ahead and copy this one down, just like that. And actually, you know what? Before we do that, just delete that one. Let's go ahead and change this to location rule. Let's say snap to target, rotation rule, snap to target, and we'll say that the scale rule is keep world in this instance. So go ahead and copy that now. I apologize for that. Okay. Drag in the second sequence executable, plug it in, give yourself a little bit of space there. And now we need references. We need references for the things we're going to attach. So how do we get that? Well, we have all of our child actors of the power line right here. So drag off, say get those, drag off that, and say, type in get. Now we want to get a copy. So under array, say get copy. And then we want to get the index, all right? So it's like where it's currently at for its own loop. So what we want to do is we want to like look up here. Okay, well here's the index. We can just run it on down. And if you don't want to do that, you can feel free to make another variable. And for the sake of saving some space and getting rid of some clutter, I'm going to do that right now. Drag off, promote to variable. We'll call it index loop 2. Go ahead and plug in the executables. Center it up there. And then that is good. We can use that. Come down to variables, pull it out. You can just directly attach it to it. So you get that. Okay. So what does this give us? This is giving us, well, let's do an example. Compile it real quick. Oops, I have an error. Okay, it's erroring because these aren't plugged in, but that's okay. We'll in a sec. Basically what we need to do is we need to get the reference for the first power line. I guess in this case it's indexed at 0, so we need to get the first reference, and then we need to add 1 to that index value so we can get the second one in the sequence because if we don't get the second one, we can't get the reference to connect to it, if that makes sense. So let's go back here to our spline power line actor. So this gives us the reference to the first one. Now, first one, wherever that may be. Then we always want to get one ahead of that. So what do? So let's copy this, and then off of the index loop 2, maybe you've already guessed what to do, but drag off, add a plus sign. That's an equals, add a plus sign, and then do integer plus an integer. It already gives you a +1, plug that in. So if we're getting all those child actors of those power lines, it's always going to give us the index, which is this is going to get the index reference, and this +1 is always going to give us one actor, one power line, or one power pole ahead of it. So we can always get references to what we're going to connect it to, which is exactly what we need. So let's think about it. How did we set up that power line? Okay, we set up that power line by adding connecting points, right? So we have connector 1, connector 2, connector 1, connector 2. We want to go from connector 1 to connector 1, connector 2 to connector 2. So let's try to set that up. So we have this attach component here, and we want to attach them together, right? So it should be pretty straightforward if you think about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull off the get, and we want to get the cable. So let's do cable 1. So we want to get cable 1, and then we want to attach, right, cable 1 to what? What is it going to be parented to? It's going to be parented to the connector on the power pole in front of it. So let's see. So let's do that. Let's just try it out right now. So pull this out. We'll say con 1, and that should give us the connecting point. And if I parent those together, if I have that as the parent, and we attach those components together, it should give me the proper. Basically, there should be a cable right now in editor for the power for the spline. Now you can see here it says there's some type of blueprint error. So let's go back and let's just really quickly detach this one. Okay, so now it compiles just fine. Oop, there we go. So let's move it over. So we can see here that it does in fact connect. So it's attaching cable 1 to the connecting point of the one in front of it, which is connecting point 1, which is awesome. So let's do that for the second one as well. So I'm going to get cable 2. Oops, I get spelled. I'm going to do cable 2. Shazam. And then want to parent it to connection 2. So I want to get connection 2. Go ahead, Go ahead and plug that in right here. Let's run that sequence executable back down to it. And now what you would expect is you'd expect there to be 2 cables. Exactly. Okay. So there's still some things missing here, but it's clearly starting to work, and you should really be getting results at this point, unless something bad has happened. So let's see here. So that's great. So what do we need to do now? We need to set proper cable length, and we need to set it so it's a little more natural. So if you look at my completed one over here, the cable lengths aren't exact. Like, they sag, but they're not exactly the same lengths. And I've added some randomness to it, which I'll show you how to add in a minute here. So what you can do is you can go ahead and go back to the spline, go back to the BP spline power line. Okay, so how do we calculate the proper lengths of these cables? Well, we have their locations, and if we have their locations, that means we can do some very basic math, and we can get the line lengths. So let's try that. So I want to get, let's see here. I've got connection 1 and connection 2. That's good. But I need to get the start connections for the very first power pole. So let's get those as well. So we'll do con 1, and we'll do con 2. Okay, so let's see. And I want to get the distance from connection 1 to connection 2 between these poles. Let's give ourselves a little more room here. Okay, so pull off con 1 connected to power pole 1, and let's say get world location, and it already comes up with a get world location for me. And I want 2 of those because I need both of the locations. So here is con 1 from power pole 2, connect that in. And then I want to subtract these. So go ahead and put a minus and do vector minus vector. Connect them up. Oops. And then I want to get vector length, and that'll give me the length of those 2 vectors. You can see it filled in right there for me. So I have the vector length, so this should be the exact cable distance. So, well, how the heck do I set this cable distance? And the answer to that is, if you went back to our actor blueprint, you would see that setting cable lengths is something that is part of each cable actor that you added as a component. So you can actually just type in cable length, and there's like a, how about let's do it right off the cable itself. So when I set the length for cable 1, pull it off, you can just say cable, you can start typing in cable length, and it understands that reference and automatically gives you the proper cable length. Now I just called get cable length, and what I really wanted to say was I want to set the cable length. Set cable length. Okay, I can see it right down here, set cable length. And it has the proper target it's setting it on, cable 1. So I'm going to add a rewire node in here. I'm going to bring this up, I'm going to plug her on in, and then I'm going to set the length. So now it's the proper cable length between the 2. Now, due to there being gravity and some other things in these cables, it should actually have some sag to it already. Yeah, so see so cable actor 1 actually has a little bit of sag to it, and is doing what it is supposed to do. You can see they're reacting to the real world physics and stuff right there. Now, what the heck is this on the end, okay? That's just crazy, right? So what's going on here is that it's setting all of the lengths. So on this end actor, there's actually a cable that's sitting at the connection point, and before it didn't have a specific length, but we just set it, basically kind of gave it some type of length, and so it is. It's actually, I think it's setting it to maybe 000 on the world, and so it's basically setting this cable length, and it doesn't need to be set. Like that's just that's something we don't want or need at the end. So I will show you how to remove that in a sec. But let's go ahead and set up cable 2 real quick. So let's go back here and let's set the length for cable 2. So go ahead and just copy this information right here. Give yourself some room. Let's just bring it over and go ahead and connect up connection point 2 from both poles, and then we can let's just steal this one. Steal that cable length. Get the reference for cable 2 instead of cable 1. It's getting a little messy now, and so I try to keep things as clean as possible, but you should be with me so far. Plug it in, and then go ahead and run that in there. And actually, it might just be cleaner if we drop it down below. Fair enough? Fair enough, okay. Alright, so you should see what's going on here, and if I compile that, you're going to go ahead and see that both of them are slacking properly. Now let's remove all this extra junk right here, because that's just crazy. Oh my god. Okay, so how do we remove that extra bit of length? Okay, so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and get all of the actors, right? And we need to say get, go down to copy, get a copy of it, and then we want to get the last spline point. So in this case, if we grab the number of spline points, it inadvertently, it also gives us the last spline point in length because it is the highest number. So that's the one right here, which we want to remove this these spaghetti cables from. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we have that reference, why don't we just go ahead and set the cable length for cable 1 and cable 2 on that to 0. So cable 1, get cable 1, say cable 2, get cable 2, and let's duplicate these. How about that? Select those, copy them, bring them forward. So got that, and we're just going to leave them at 0, and that should clean it up for us. So plug in the reference, now I believe that if you were to do cable 2 before its attachment, it's going to get really weird. So I think it's not, you don't think it would work if you put these on the same one. I think you should leave them separated like this. So now that you have the cables at the very end set to 0, they should disappear, and voila. So click on it, drag off, Alt and drag, and it keeps adding more. And you can see that we have no spaghetti cables. Now that's looking pretty good right now, if I do say so myself. So what else do we need? Well, I can show you a couple other little things that you can do. One of them is adding random slack to your line. Let's go back and take a look at this. We can add some random slack to it. Okay, so the random slack. Let's see here. So what you want to do is you want to take the vector length, which is basically the length between the two connection points, and then you want to add more slack to it so it hangs a little bit more. But you don't want to do it the same amount every time, or they'll look kind of it'll look robotic. It doesn't look like real life. You know, it doesn't look like they should be at different lengths. So let's go ahead and say, right click and say random float. Oops. Random float range. Oops, I misspelled that, but it's okay, I got the reference. So do random float in range. And so let's say anywhere from 0 to, let's say 120. 0 to 120. And we want to add this random amount between 0 and 120 to the vector length. So let's pull off this, and let's just put the plus sign and do float plus float. So go ahead and plug that float in there. They're being added together, and then stick it in the cable length, hit compile, and now cable 1 should have different random lengths. So see how it is? See how like this droops down less, this is somewhere in the middle. It's more varied. Now you can tighten it up a little bit. You know, I'm just kind of spitballing here with these numbers, so you can do it to what you deem appropriate. You can right click, delete spline point. So I'll drag there. Yeah, it's probably a little much. So maybe 100 would be more appropriate there. And you can go ahead and do the same thing for the one below, and then it'll auto-generate, and it'll look more natural, you know, because they're not all identical in terms of length or uniformly lengthed. So and it's a nice little touch. It just makes things look a little more, maybe look more a little. Oh my gosh, it makes things a little more real. Okay, so what do we have now? We have a completed powerline spline system. You know, you can move it wherever you want. You can add your own features. You could replace models. You could do whatever you want with it. You know, it's just a really versatile tool, and you know, feel free to modify it at will. And I hope it suits your needs. If you guys come up with anything cool, or you want me to add something to it, feel free to ask me. Throw it in the comments below. I'll make sure to do it. If you create something cool yourself, feel free to post it down below with a link, and I'd love to see it.